Did you know that right now you have got millions and millions and millions of organisms living inside you? You have a symbiotic relationship with these tiny, tiny little creatures, so small that there are probably, in fact, definitely more of those organisms in your gut than there are cells in your body. A remarkable number. Now, unusually, before I sort of get into what's on the screen, I'm going to ask a question and then come back to this stuff. The question I'm going to just ask is, what is the gut? Now, you probably think you know the answer to that. I would imagine that you've got a pretty good idea where your guts are and what we mean by the gut, but I want to be really, really specific with this. The gut, what we are referring to today, is the location of digestion. Okay, the location of digestion. Now, what that means is this does not mean just our stomach, for example, just our small intestine. It is, in essence, the digestive tract as a whole that we're going to refer to as the gut. And we're going to have quite a strong focus here on the large intestine, which you can see in this kind of light green, this sort of a minty green colour over here. What else is this gut thing? Well, it's something that interacts with the immune system. We're going to talk about quite a bit about the immune system today. It interacts with the immune system, and I would estimate that for most of you, you have got some understanding of the immune system. You know a bit about antibodies and antitoxins and phagocytosis and processes such as this, but we're going to look today at how the gut interacts with those processes, because don't forget, one of the things that can happen in the gut is that things from the outside, pathogens included, can get in there and potentially be a risk to the health of the human being in question. So that's what the gut is. What else is it? The gut is also a gateway. And I'm going to present to you something that I personally call donut theory. Okay, and I don't think, to my knowledge, no one else uses this name. And by the way, if there is such a thing as donut theory, I'm not referring to that. This is James's donut theory. I want you to consider that a human being, the core structure of a human being, we tend to think of it as like, it's a bit like a cylinder with the head on top and the legs on the bottom, the arms. I tend to think about it like a solid cylinder, like your thorax and your abdomen. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. But I want you to start thinking that your body shape actually is like a donut. And what I mean by that, and this is something that you want to be considering really closely, is that the inside of this tract going down into the small and the large intestine, the inner surface of that remains, air quotes, the outside of your body. Now, that is because everything that goes through that that passageway through that tract, none of it has crossed any kind of membrane. It's not got to the inside of our body. So what we mean by that is that our gut is the gateway, based on us being shaped like a donut, the inside of our gut being still the outside of our body, technically speaking, even though it doesn't seem to be. What that means is that things inside, for example, you guys will know that things that get into our small intestine, let's say proteins that have been broken down into amino acids, they can get inside the body, into the bloodstream, in the small intestine, for example. You guys will have a good understanding of that. Therefore, we've got a gateway. That's what we're talking about here. Now, let me go a little bit further. I also want you to know that the gut communicates with the brain. That feels a bit strange to me when I think about it. The gut communicates with the brain, but then I think, okay, what about hunger and what about those sorts of sensations and feeling full? Okay, maybe there's something around that. I also want you to be aware of this. Your gut influences mood. Now, I think we all can be sort of aware of hunger, for example, making us a bit hangry or hangriness. I don't know if that term spreads the whole world, but certainly here in the UK we talk about not angriness sometimes, but hangriness, as in hunger causing more of a mood anger. But the other thing, and this I think is a fairly obvious point, the gut, the other thing that the gut is, it's something that affects, and I've touched on this already, it affects hunger and appetite. So basically, one of the things I want to promote to you for today is that a healthy gut, including a healthy microbiome of the gut, is really important to a general sense of health in a person. And then that can have knock-on impacts to, for example, how we might perform, how we might exercise. So, clarification of terms now. The microbiome is all of the genes, the collective genomes of all the millions and millions of organisms living inside our gut. The microbiota is the organisms themselves, and we are going to focus heavily on the large intestine in this particular tutorial. That other parts of the gut are relevant as well, but I want you to have that really clear. Living inside you, especially in that large intestine, are literally multiple millions of organisms that are living their little simple lives out in that environment. It's quite remarkable to think of it like that. Okay, what I want to do then is I want to start thinking about these microbiota. Okay, so let me put that term down here. We've got microbiota. These are the organisms living inside us. Okay, what should we be aware of with these? Well, first of all, how do we get them in there? Well, they are sourced in fiber. So by eating fiber, we are introducing additional microbiota into our microbiome. Okay, so fiber becomes a useful part of our kind of diet in that sense. Moreover, something that's not as good is they are damaged by alcohol. So think about these little organisms living inside you. They don't like a drink. Okay, so now it's not my role to say whether you shouldn't drink alcohol. Some people will, some people won't, but that's something for us to be aware of. Other things about our microbiota: they are helped or facilitated by, polyphenols. Let me just drag down slightly. Now, we're studying polyphenols in other tutorials on this particular course. If you haven't done those yet, polyphenols are found largely in fruits and vegetables, and what these do is that they can facilitate, that means help, they can sort of back up, help what we would call good organisms or good microbiota, and they will inhibit bad. Okay, so kind of the good bacteria that we want in our gut is facilitated by polyphenols, fruit, vegetables, this kind of food. And those that are considered bad are inhibited, they're prevented, they're discouraged. Other things, we get facilitation through protein. Okay, so your microbiota are facilitated by protein. So appropriate amounts of protein in one's diet is really important for a healthy gut, and that's something for us to think about. And the other thing about our microbiota, one of the absolutely critical roles they play is they protect people. They protect people from pathogens. So again, I just want to repeat that point. We've got the idea that pathogens can use the gateway that is the gut to get into our body, get inside our system. And actually, part of the role of the microbiota and the microbiome as a whole is to prevent that from happening, or to at least to offer a layer of prevention additional to what you'll have studied elsewhere. Now, I want to get into the consideration of digestion now. Okay, so you guys will have a pretty solid understanding of digestion, I'm going to imagine. So let's just think about digestion. You know that, for example, there's mechanical digestion, there's chemical digestion. You'll have studied these things before. But I just want to go through some core assumptions. You will know that in the small intestine, which of course is the part of the digestive tract just after the stomach, the small intestine is where a lot of the action happens, okay? And this is where most nutrients are actually absorbed. Most nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine. So think about your amino acids, think about your glucose, for example. However, unabsorbed nutrients, they are passed on, and they are passed on to the large intestine. And this is where we really want to pick up the story, because this for us is very interesting. Now, what's going to happen in that large intestine is the microbiota, exactly what we've just talked about, they are going to form the breakdown. Okay, they're our breakdown service, if you want to put it like that. They are now going to break down these unabsorbed nutrients, the hard to digest nutrients, and that is going to be done by those microorganisms. And what they release is something called metabolites. Okay, so we then produce something called metabolites. And I want to give you a couple of examples. We would talk about the B complex, which I'm going to talk here about the B vitamins. And there's numerous B vitamins, as you're probably aware, and vitamin K. These metabolites are released through the breakdown of this unabsorbed material that enters the large intestine. And that breakdown is done by the biodiversity, the microbiota that is in the gut. That is one of the absolutely critical roles that is played. Another role that they play, or that happens here, is when that process is finished. So for example, when that process is over and we've now got an empty gut, so think about sort of an empty large intestine, what's going to happen here is that there's going to be a signal, and this signal is to the brain, and the brain then sort of gets that message that we need to sort of trigger hunger, and it's time to eat. We need to cause that eating pattern to happen again. Moreover, we've got our system, what it can do for us here. Let me just change colour again. What we can do here is we can also signal the immune system. So if we have a pathogen in our gut, we can signal the immune system, and what the immune system can do is it can do a number of things. For example, it can produce a stress signal, which of course leads to a response. Other things it can do is it can produce inflammation, or the inflammatory response, I should really say. So again, the gut is playing a critical role in protecting us from external dangers. And then finally, on this digestive point, I want to get this across. Once we start to eat, so we get the arrival of food, so food comes in to the gut, what's going to happen here is that we're going to get a trigger, and this trigger comes from the small intestine, and this trigger, it produces what are referred to as satiety hormones. Okay, satiety. Sorry, I found this word really hard to say. Satiety hormones, and these satiety hormones, what they do is they trigger the sense of fullness of our gut. So we've got that going on as we go through. Now, I just want to go now finally onto the specific roles of the microbiome. Okay, specifically, what does this microbiome do? So let's get into the nitty-gritty of that, and that will get us over the line. First of all, as we've said already, it extracts and synthesizes, and we are talking here about extracting nutrients and synthesizing things like vitamins. Think about your vitamin K, think about your B complex that we referred to earlier. It can also produce fatty acids, and these fatty acids are really important because, amongst other things, they strengthen the gut barrier. Okay, actually part of our defensive systems in this sense. As we've said already, the microbiome prevents pathogens. Now, we should be clear here. The job of the microbiome is to prevent overgrowth. It's sort of to stop them in their tracks and actually prevent them from causing a problem. Obviously, the immune systems are often responding. This is more of a preventative thing. We also have the microbiome. They have a role of releasing dopamine. Okay, so it releases dopamine and serotonin. Obviously, these hormones are neurotransmitters that are associated with mood. And finally, we have a decreased likelihood of REDS. Now, REDS is a condition which is caused by low energy availability and affects athletes, especially female athletes. And it can be prevented. We've got that covered in lots of other tutorials, but it's prevented with a healthy microbiome in the gut. Okay, hopefully that's useful for you, and that's clarified a few points.